Civil war at DOJ. I'm Michael SMERCONISH in Philadelphia. The Department of Justice is in turmoil over President Trump's desire to dismiss corruption charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams in return for Adams' collaboration on border policy. A mass exodus is occurring within DOJ, including in the Southern District of New York, arguably the DOJ's most prestigious outpost. 7 DOJ prosecutors have quit in the last 3 days rather than carry out an order given by Deputy Attorney General Elie Honig, who happens to be Trump's former criminal defense attorney, to drop the corruption case against Adams. So yesterday, Honig and 2 other DOJ officials, they signed it themselves. Many of these players are not yet household names, but this is a story with legs. It's important, and it warrants a deep dive. Pam Bondi was the former Florida Attorney General. She's now the U.S. Attorney General. Her deputy is Elie Honig. The interim U.S. Attorney for the Southern District had been Danielle Sassoon, and the lead prosecutor working the case was Hagen Scotton. Honig directed Sassoon to drop the corruption case against Adams. The corruption charges were related to his receipt of $123,000 in travel perks, allegedly in return for fast-tracking the opening of the Turkish consulate in Manhattan. Adams pleaded not guilty to those charges. The Adams indictment was announced by Sassoon's predecessor, who himself was appointed by President Biden. Sassoon refused to drop the charges against Eric Adams and resigned. And then so did Scotton. Sassoon and Scotton are not two progressives using lawfare against Donald Trump. Sassoon was put in her recent position by the Trump team. She's a Federalist Society member. She's a former clerk for Justice Antonin Scalia. Scotton similarly has conservative credentials. He clerked for both Chief Justice John Roberts and Judge Brett Kavanaugh before Kavanaugh joined the Supreme Court. Scotton is a Harvard Law grad who served 3 combat tours in Iraq as a Special Forces officer and earned 2 Bronze Stars. And both Sassoon and Scotton are not going quietly into the night. In a letter to Pam Bondi, Sassoon wrote this: "Such an exchange with Adams violates common sense beliefs in the equal administration of justice, the Justice Manual, and the rules of professional conduct." She underscored the quid pro quo nature of the request to drop the charges against Adams, writing, "I attended a meeting on January 31, 2025 with Mr. Honig, Adams's counsel, and members of my office. Adams's attorneys repeatedly urged what amounted to a quid pro quo, indicating that Adams would be in a position to assist with the department's enforcement priorities only if the indictment were dismissed. Mr. Honig admonished a member of my team who took notes during the meeting and directed the collection of those notes at the meeting's conclusion." Elie Honig then replied as follows: "In no valid sense do you uphold the Constitution by disobeying direct orders implementing the policy of a duly elected president, and anyone romanticizing that behavior does a disservice to the nature of this work and the public's perception of our efforts." And then in his own resignation letter to Honig, Scotton, the prosecutor, wrote this: "Any assistant U.S. attorney would know that our laws and traditions do not allow the using of prosecutorial power to influence other citizens, much less elected officials, in this way. If no lawyer within earshot of the president is willing to give him that advice, then I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion. But it was never going to be me." Well, in the end, that person was Honig himself, who signed the motion to dismiss the charges against Adams. And there's been no attempt here to mask what has just taken place. The Trump administration is seeking to drop a criminal prosecution in return for the defendant, Eric Adams, supporting Trump's immigration agenda. Keep in mind, had there been a conviction, Adams would likely have faced a federal prison stint. What's happened here is reminiscent, at least to me, of President Nixon demanding his attorney general fire the special prosecutor investigating him, only to have his attorney general and his deputy AG refuse. They called it the Saturday Night Massacre. And the payoff here is obvious. In my Sirius XM radio studio, I have 3 muted televisions that are always turned on. One's turned on to CNN, one to MSNBC, one to Fox. It's my way of keeping an eye out for breaking news while I'm on the air. So yesterday, Friday morning, I looked up and I saw Mayor Adams seated on the Fox morning show, the so-called comfy couch, next to Tom Homan. In their discussion, Homan, the border czar, had a warning for Adams, the New York City mayor.
If he doesn't come through,
You're up early anyway.
if he doesn't come through, I'll be back in New York City,
Right.
and we won't be sitting on the couch. I'll be in his office, up his butt, saying, "Where the hell is the agreement we came to?"
If he doesn't come through, I'm going to be up his butt. And I'm not the only one who found the pairing odd. This is the front page of the New York Post today. The odd couple, they call it. President Trump, who claims that he was the victim of lawfare, is himself now clearly using the power of DOJ as his own weapon. As part of the immigration crackdown already, Mayor Adams has vowed to reopen the shuttered ICE office at Rikers Island to the feds. Those offices were closed in 2014 after then-Mayor Bill de Blasio signed into law a sanctuary city bill. Yesterday, Pam Bondi told Fox News that she expected the case against Adams to be dropped soon.
At this point, though, the case has not been dropped, actually, because of this pushback. What happens in that?
Yeah, Martha, I'm on a different time zone, but it's my understanding it is being dismissed today.
And it was. Soon thereafter, Beauvais and two others signed the motion to drop the case against Eric Adams. Adams, late Friday, then released a statement doubling down on what he told Fox and emphasizing he was not part of any deal. Mayor Adams said, "I want to be crystal clear with New Yorkers. I never offered, nor did anyone offer on my behalf, any trade of my authority as your mayor for an end to my case. Never. I'm solely beholden to the 8.3 million New Yorkers that I represent, and I will always put this city first. Now we must put this difficult episode behind us so that trust can be restored, New York can move forward, and we can continue delivering for the people of this city." The motion to dismiss the charges will now go to Judge Dale E. Ho, who is overseeing the Adams case in Manhattan federal court. Normally, such a request from prosecutors would be accepted by a judge as a matter of course. But nothing in this case has so far been by the book. It all leads to today's poll question at SMERCONISH.com. Should a president have the authority to dismiss prosecutions if they believe it serves a greater national interest? Joining me now is CNN senior legal analyst and former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, Elie Honig. Elie, great to see you again. Clearly, there's a quid pro quo here, in my opinion, but is there any criminality?
Well, Michael, first of all, as to the question whether there's a quid pro quo, which Eric Adams is disputing, let's consider the converse of what happened here. What if in that meeting with Eric Adams and his lawyers and Emil Beauvais and DOJ, what if Eric Adams had said, no, I actually do not support Donald Trump's agenda on immigration? Would he have still gotten this dismissal? I think it's 100% clear. The answer is no. There's your quid pro quo. Now, is there criminality? Is there somebody who could be charged criminally with some sort of corruption? First of all, the answer is this DOJ certainly is not going to do that. But second of all, that's going to come down to the specific nuances of what exactly was said by whom, using exactly what words in that meeting. And importantly, as Danielle Sassoon notes, her team tried to take notes but was told to stop, and then Beauvais seized their notes. So ultimately it would come down to different accounts of what exactly was said within that meeting. I'm sure they would differ in substantial ways.
Beauvais is Bondi's hatchet. She could have signed that motion. You correct me if I'm wrong. I heard her say she was in a different time zone. But in the end, when they couldn't get someone else to sign it, he did it himself. But why didn't she, I guess is my question.
Yeah, the time zone excuse doesn't really hold much water with me. Things still are happening simultaneously. Pam Bondi has a bit of a management and leadership problem on her hand, a self-created one. First of all, she seems to not know what's happening in this case. At a press conference 3 days before, she was asked about this case. She said, your office has ordered this case to be dismissed, but no motion's been put in. And her response was, I didn't know that. Either she is hopelessly out of touch with what her own Justice Department is doing, or she's not being straight with us. And the other point, Michael, I want to say is she needs to get her house in order. I mean, you titled your segment Civil War at DOJ. It's exactly right. They need to learn how to do their laundry indoors, not out of doors. But yes, Pam Bondi could have signed this motion by herself. Emil Beauvais could have signed this motion by himself. Instead, he strong-armed a team of two other career prosecutors to sign it. And I think it's very clear, given the reporting, that those two people who signed it with Beauvais do not agree with him. They did it simply to stop the bleeding, to stop mass resignations and firings.
I have a question for you, Elie, about President Trump and what he is saying and not saying about this case. Let's watch it. It's about a 30-second clip.
Well, I don't know about it. I mean, obviously, I'm not involved in that. But I would say this, that if they had a problem, and these are mostly people from the previous administration, you understand, so they weren't going to be there anyway. They were going to all be gone or dismissed. If not, they know on Tuesday they're all being dismissed. You know, the whole country is being, because what you do is you come in and you put new people in. So when you say resign, they're going to be gone anyway. But I know nothing about the individual case. I know that they didn't feel it was much of a case. They also felt that it was unfair with the election.
So that's belied by the resignation letter that Sassoon wrote. But I want to ask something different than the merits of the case. Would it have been cleaner for President Trump if he had just pardoned Eric Adams? And why don't you think he pursued that path, at least not yet?
It's a great question. If Donald Trump had just said, I pardoned Eric Adams, or if Emil Bove had written a letter saying, I've reviewed this case carefully, I do not believe the evidence is sufficient to support these charges. And by the way, it was not a slam dunk case. It was a decent case. If either of those things had happened, we would talk about it. We would say this is an unjust use of the pardon power. We would say Emil Bove is wrong when he says the case is too weak to proceed. And that would have been that. But what's different here and what makes this such an important story is DOJ is explicitly saying the reason we're dismissing this indictment, the reason we're going to take away the very real possibility of you, Eric Adams, going to federal prison is because you agree with us and have agreed to help us enforce our policy initiatives. That's why Hagan Scott was so pointed in that letter that you quoted in the beginning, and I love how he said it. He said, it was never going to be me. This is contrary to everything DOJ stands for.
Can I just say it's a confusing case, and that's why I wanted to take the time, especially with you, Elie, to try and unwrap it, show the pictures, explain the players. I want to say that I'm personally pleased that Eric Adams is becoming more aggressive relative to border enforcement and the migrant issue. This is not the way to get it done, by trading out, you know, a criminal indictment of someone in a case like this. You can have the final word.
Well, imagine the precedent this sets, Michael. I mean, think of any other case. Let's take it out of New York City. Let's take it out of Eric Adams. Let's even take it back to the Biden administration. What if the mayor of a town in Texas was under indictment and the Biden administration went to that mayor in Texas and said, you know, we think that border policy should actually be lessened. We think we should be more lenient in letting people through. Are you on board with that, mayor? And if the mayor said yes, you go, good news, mayor. Now your indictment is dismissed. Wouldn't we have a massive problem with that? This is the exact same scenario, just reversed. And if I don't want to infect your poll question here, Michael, about whether it's ever okay for the president to use his power to, his prosecutorial power.
Put it up on the screen, Catherine.
Put
up the poll question. Go. Wait. Hang on. Put the poll question up on the screen. There's the poll question. Go ahead, Elie. Why are you voting no?
I'm voting no. Then I'm logging off. Then I'm creating a new username. Then I'm voting no again. Because the president has all sorts of tools to reward and to punish people who either do or do not support his agenda. That's politics. But prosecution, the power of prosecution, has to be out of bounds for that. It leads to incredibly dangerous places. It leads to using DOJ as a weapon, as a reward. Sorry, I know you like 50-50 results. This one needs to be 90-10.
Elie, thank you as always. Really appreciate your insight.
All right. Thanks, Michael.